All right, so everyone should be able to see my screen, which has a PowerPoint of an introductory slide. If you have any technical difficulties or if you have questions and you are watching the live webinar and not the recording, you are able to put a question into the questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel, which should be on the side of your screen. So let me know if you have any questions or concerns. I'll try to address them throughout. However, if you also need to refer back to this material or to any of the other prior Point-in-Time-Count materials, you can see that our website, monarchhousing.org, is here, and excited to work with you all on the 2019 Point-in-Time-Count. Thank you also for being a Point-in-Time-Count coordinator or COC lead entity. We are hoping that both the COC lead agencies as well as point-in-time coordinators will benefit from these materials because it's kind of a joint operation. We need decisions made about methodology by the COC executive committee and implemented by the lead, but we also need coordination around any Homeless Connect events or outreach strategies that may be provided by you coordinators out there. So thank you again already in advance of your work to help with the point-in-time count. All right, NJCounts 2019, an introduction. 2019 is a HUD-mandated point-in-time count year for both sheltered and unsheltered counts. Technically, for unsheltered counts, HUD mandates that that be completed every other year, and both counts must be completed in the last 10 days of January per the HEART Act and the COC program interim rule. So we are going to do everything in our power to help you guys have an effective count strategy for both sheltered, which would be in hotel, motel, paid for by an agency, emergency shelters, safe havens, or transitional housing for homeless persons, and then unsheltered, which would be anyone living in a place not meant for human habitation. Each COC is responsible for the local planning and coordination of the point-in-time count, and it's important to remember that the COC executive board, executive committee, or whatever the top decision-making body is in your continuum of care should approve your point-in-time count methodology before we move forward. So make sure that some of the questions we have about, hey, are we going to do a street count? Are we going to do a service-based count? Are we going to have interview questions? Are we going to do sampling? Those are the types of questions that the COC board should weigh in on, or COC executive committee. All right, the 2019 process, very similar in terms of some of the options that we have for the count methodology to the 2018 process. HUD's publication of training resources regarding the point-in-time count is that for the first year in a long time, there is very little change in terms of what data must be reported to HUD for the point-in-time count and the housing inventory. So we plan to continue to use paper surveys and HMIS data in conjunction with one another. But one of the important pieces, this last bullet on the slide, to keep in mind is whether or not your community would like to include additional questions and gather more information than is required by HUD. And if that is the case, we would ask that you already be considering the possible addenda questions and the answers so that we can help you make a format that works to include, and so we'll talk about the deadlines for that coming up. In terms of survey updates, this survey plan for this year is based heavily on the 2018 format to accurately assess whether households meet the HUD definition of chronically homeless. You'll remember that there were some updates to last year's survey with that in mind. We plan to have very similar survey responses, and there are going to be, again, updates to the SurveyMonkey formatting per any addenda that you may want to include, community by community. However, that information should be gathered fairly similarly, but it's still a conversation we hope to have at the upcoming meeting of the HMIS Advisory Council and in conjunction with you on an individual basis for the addenda. And we'll go over it again later. You'll see it in writing, but the HMIS Advisory Council is going to be taking place this coming Friday, November the 16th at 9 a.m. The doors will open, 10 a.m. the meeting will start in Trenton at 637 South Clinton Avenue at HMFA. If you need any more information about that, you can feel free to contact myself or anyone here at Monarch. All right, moving on, developing a plan. Okay, what we're talking about today is mostly the role of you as the point-in-time coordinator and the COC lead agency. And the most important piece may be having a plan and not just having the point-in-time count kind of happen around us. So it's really important to organize those folks who may not be as well integrated in your continuum of care as some of the other providers. So for example, it may be youth shelters, code blue shelters, or domestic violence survivor programs that are shelters or transitional housing that may not be in the HMIS system. Okay, when Monarch is pulling the sheltered count, one of our main sources of data is the HMIS or Homeless Management Information System for your community. If you have providers who are not in that system, then we have to make sure that we are going to gather their information by paper survey, and some organization may need to be done around that. Don't forget about those providers who are definitely serving homeless persons but need to be included in the planning because they're not going to get just automatically pulled from the HMIS system. Also, organizing street counts. Very important to figure out who are our outreach teams. Are we doing outreach teams and doing a 7-day service-based count? If that's the case, who are the service providers that are going to be included in those counts? What's the locations that we know those folks who are living unsheltered but who are not regularly accessing services, where are they accessing services and how can we engage with them? So making sure that you have that organized. If you have any Project Homeless Connect events, make sure that you include those folks in the training for the survey, as well as ensuring that you are maybe doing some preparation with folks who may be seeking those services in advance of the point-in-time count to drive, interest and make sure that they have the information about what's available so they may be counted. Determining count procedures, we also already just touched on. There is one major methodological distinction that we want to make sure you keep in mind. There is an optional 7-day window for the point-in-time count, which will be in 2019's count from the day of the point-in-time count, which is January 23rd through January 30th of 2019. Again, that will still be asking about the night of the point-in-time count, which will be from January 22nd into January 23rd, the overnight period from that Tuesday into Wednesday. Notify Monarch, please, if you're going to plan to use this methodology. We just want to make sure that we should be expecting that. And we want to make sure that people are trained appropriately when we're doing our trainings so that they understand how your community is planning to gather that information. Okay, coordinating with participating agencies. One of the things that we are going to be asking for, if you look at that second bullet point, is we always send you a agency code list. And basically it's a shorthand code that we can use to identify which agencies are the source for different surveys that come in to, that are entered in SurveyMonkey. So if you can verify those agency codes, we are planning to send them out in this week. So you will see them shortly. And then we'll be giving you about a month's time to check in with everybody, make sure you have a comprehensive list of those agencies. And we're going to ask you to confirm that agency code list by December the 14th of 2018, as you can see. So if there's stuff that happens after that, that may be, and that's fine. We'll address those things. However, please figure on trying to take a look at the materials that we send you this week and reaching out to any agencies that may have had a name change or may have added additional programs that may need to be included, new agencies that are providing outreach or services in your community, and we'll update those agency code lists with you by that second week of December. The full list of participating agencies should be on that agency code list, and that could include, again, non-HMIS participating agencies. It really probably should. It could include healthcare providers. It could include your outreach teams. It could include code blue shelters, domestic violence shelters, youth shelters, hotel motel placements from your Board of Social Services if they are not being entered into the HMIS, or maybe they should still be having their separate codes because they're going to be surveying folks who come and seek services at their location as part of your service-based count. So those are all pieces to keep in mind. And then, of course, emergency shelters, transitional housing, and safe haven programs. Confirming HIMSS participating programs as well, really crucial. Another thing that we send out besides the agency code list will be a HIMSS participating program list, okay? And that should have the confirmation date the same as the agency code list, so take about the next month through December 14th, 2018, and we're asking that you take a look at that HIMSS program list, confirm with those HIMSS participating agencies in your COC that they will be providing data on the night of the point-in-time count through the HMIS, that they are keeping up to date with that data, and so it's reliable, and that they are going to be able to ensure that that information is correct for the night of the count. One special note is that SSO sheltering programs, or supportive services only shelter programs, basically those would be your hotel motel projects that may receive some form of funding to place people in a hotel motel temporarily. If it's set up as a supportive services only project and it is not labeled as an emergency shelter program, we need it to have a separate HIMSS program for hotel motel placements that can be set up for emergency shelter only, okay? Because some of these programs are set up as SSO and they may include some hotel motel placements, but they also include maybe a food bag distribution or maybe a service of prevention such as a security deposit. That would be confusing because some of the participants would be homeless and some would not be, and we need to make sure that we clear that up. I know our friends at HMFA have been trying to clear that up with some of their HMIS providers or participating agencies. So if there's any work left to be done on that, please keep an eye out for those types of projects on the list that we send you. The survey itself, again, will be pulled from participating projects that are in the HMIS. Hotel motel placements that are in programs in HMIS will be pulled if they're set up as emergency shelter programs. Paper surveys without age or gender, okay, will not be usable. Okay, it's one of the things that makes it very difficult to actually discern how we can categorize that person for the purposes of reporting to HUD. If they have no age, we don't know if they were an adult or a child, for instance. So that's a really critical piece that we will emphasize in our training and that we ask you to keep in mind in terms of the data collection methodology that you are planning to use and how to navigate around those types of issues. In the event of duplicates with HMIS and paper survey records, the HIMSS record will be used. Okay, so it's really critical as we work on our point-in-time count strategy that we emphasize to our HIMSS participating agencies that HIMSS is really going to be the primary source of the data. We want to rely on it. We want to think that it's going to be accurate as possible. So for instance, if somebody stayed in a emergency shelter program in the community on the night of the point-in-time count, but they also went to a Project Homeless Connect event in the community and they were surveyed, and we find that duplicate record, we're going to take the HMIS record over that paper survey because we know that's where that person stayed on the night of the point-in-time count. Okay, point-in-time count addenda. I alluded to it before, but please notify Monarch by Friday, December the 7th, whether your community wishes to add an addendum to the point-in-time count survey, and we need to know the additional questions that you would like asked, the answer options that should be provided, whether it's an open-ended answer or whether it has a multiple choice selection or whether it's, check boxes, check all that apply. Make sure that you give us that information and the different answer options that are necessary. And then, of course, the question types should be labeled by each question so that we can properly set it up in the SurveyMonkey tool as you are going to be setting it up in your paper survey format. Okay, so that's really critical in order to serve your needs. If you do have any other needs besides gathering the required point-in-time count information, we want to make sure that we get that all together so that it's set up. And the reason that we're asking for it by December 7th is because we are hoping that we are going to be sending you prior to the holidays, prior to the December holidays and January holidays, a link that you can use to practice for the point-in-time count in your community. And in order to have that practice link together, we want to make sure that it includes your Addenda information to the extent that's possible. So if we have it by December 7th, we can make sure that we set it up in SurveyMonkey, that we crash test it and make sure that it's going to work for you, and then we can send it to you. You can disseminate it to your community providers and say, here's a practice link. You can use this from mid-December through mid-January if you have anybody that needs training to make sure that it's going to work for you, and we can collect the information we want to collect. All right, so keep that in mind. Point-in-time count Addenda deadline, December 7th. 2019 count focus. 2017 was a baseline year for HUD with regard to youth counting, but the emphasis continues in your your NOFA application, or your consolidated application, collaborative application that's submitted to HUD. HUD continues to ask what strategies are being implemented in your community to specifically address and identify youth who are homeless on the point-in-time count. And the other emphasis this year, as in past years, would be the unsheltered count. What strategies can be implemented and what methodologies are being used. Not to say that any other population would be less important. However, these are the two areas where there's a greater emphasis on HUD's wanting to understand how we are implementing these counts in our communities, and also the need for accurate information when we're talking about prioritizing resources for housing. Okay, strategies for a successful youth count, just a basic slide here. Having maybe a lead person or organization to have youth-focused strategies, that may help because it may give a little bit more sharp focus to those endeavors and make sure that folks are really focused on what's going to be appropriate for a homeless youth who may be identified in the community versus any other subpopulation. So kind of disaggregating that effort and giving it a specific focus and some leadership. Idea number 2 would be partnering with youth organizations such as LGBTQ organizations, because actually LGBTQ identifying youth are at much higher risk of homelessness than other youth subpopulations, so that's a real factor. Homeless education liaisons who may know of the numbers of homeless youth who are in different school districts, high schools and colleges that may know of their students who also have experienced homelessness on the night of the count. Law enforcement may also have their own idea and knowledge of where folks are congregating, including homeless youth, so they may be a good resource. And then child welfare or youth outreach teams that may already be in your community but haven't historically participated in depth in the point-in-time count and may need some training. That would be great. So encourage youth to participate in the point-in-time count. That would be a big help potentially, to have some peers that may understand what the need is or how to communicate best with some youth who may not be comfortable identifying as homeless. Amp up awareness of the count through social media. That has proven to be more and more effective in some communities across the state, where they are really targeting that message around the point-in-time count or youth connect events. And that last one would be to look at, are there any ways to hold a youth-centric event? Any providers that may be able to engage youth who are at risk or who are experiencing homelessness, so that we can really drill down and have access to provide services to them and to identify them at the base level for the point-in-time count. All right, in terms of unsheltered count, it's really important that one of the things that I think we're going to emphasize in a moment is just that you are able to access, not just through Monarch, but directly through HUD, the point-in-time count methodology guides that HUD provides. There are a couple of different methodologies. There are actually a number of different ways you could structure your point-in-time count for the street count or the unsheltered count. It could be a simple street count, Some communities that have larger numbers of homeless persons utilize an observation-based street count. Typically what we have been doing in New Jersey writ large is street counts with an interview. And so you can do a census count where you're really trying to cover your full geographic area, or at least predominantly those known locations where folks are gathering or can be identified, and then strategizing about how to cover the rest of your geography, maybe through a service-based count. There's also random sampling and extrapolation, but that would need to be planned about. We are only going to interview every, 5th or 10th person, depending on how many folks you're just, expecting to identify on the night of the count, and what type of size sample you would need in order to have reliable statistical extrapolation. And then there's the service-based count. Now, these do not need to be mutually exclusive. You can do both a street count and service-based count, which we talked about earlier, the 7-day service-based count window. So you definitely need to have a deduplicating mechanism in order to accomplish that, because if you're going to have someone identified through street outreach as well as surveyed when they attend a Homeless Connect event or some other service provision in your community, you want to make sure you're not counting people twice. All right, so that's some basics of methodology, but the reason that understanding the methodology options is going to be so helpful is because it will help you deal with important issues and decisions that arise, such as how are we dealing when we have an unresponsive respondent, if someone who's not participating in our interview questions. What sampling methods are going to work and be appropriate based on the number of people we plan to identify. We already talked, some methods can be combined, but how is that appropriately done? And what's best for my geography based on the mix of urban, rural, suburban in my geography, what's going to really work? And so HUD does have the resources that can help provide some groundwork for how to think about your methodology. One of the other things I will say is please do plan to attend on Friday, November the 16th, 2018 at HMFA if you are a point-in-time coordinator or COC lead, to discuss those methodological issues as well as how we're strategizing about the point-in-time count survey to most effectively count those who are unsheltered in our communities. All right, the 2019 count process. If you are a veteran point-in-time count coordinator, you will recognize this slide. This is the exact same information as our past point-in-time count process slides. For unsheltered persons or at-risk persons, you can see that we're doing that paper survey methodology. We also actually have SurveyMonkey as a available resource that if you have folks who have web-enabled devices, if your community so decides that it's appropriate to skip the paper survey, you could do it right in the SurveyMonkey portal at the link provided. However, if you want to be able to look back and make sure there's no errors in the data entry, paper surveys can also be helpful because you could hand screen or you could make sure that you could have a paper record of what the information should have been in case there's any discrepancies in what gets entered. For sheltered populations, for those who are in a sheltered location, as you can see, it could be just an HMIS data entry where we are ensuring that our data is up to date for the night of January the 22nd into the 23rd, and making sure that that information is correct so that when Monarch pulls the HMIS data for the point-in-time count, that we get the right information. If an entity or a shelter provider is not in HMIS or the HMIS, then we are going to ensure that they have access to the paper survey, or as we said before, to the way to enter the data through the SurveyMonkey portal. Those are critical pieces. Please do not forget about our shelter providers who are not in the HMIS. And whether a provider is in the HMIS or is not in the HMIS, please notice this last bullet. This is a really important point. All shelter programs, whether they're in HMIS or not, we ask them to submit a shelter summary form or a summary survey form. The reason that's critical is because it helps us discern whether the information that was entered into SurveyMonkey or the information that we pulled from the HMIS is accurate, because that shelter summary form will be from the shelter provider who will say, I had 10 families with 20 people in my shelter on the night of the point-in-time count. But when we pull the data from HMIS, If it does not match 10 households and 20 persons, we have to have a conversation with that provider and you and ask you to figure out together, how did this happen? Is this the right number that was entered? Do we need to update our HMIS data or our SurveyMonkey entry? And we'll make sure that we have accurate information. All right, so a really important piece is that shelter summary form. This is what it looks like. Just ask for one per agency, and it will be due on Friday, January the 25th of 2019 by the end of business 5 p.m. So please keep that in mind, and this will be distributed to you all, and we'll ask that you as point-in-time-count coordinators distribute it to all the participating agencies. Okay? Now, training. One of the things that we always try to accomplish is with Monarch personnel to provide trainings in your community and assist you with training your outreach staff or your shelter providing staff, basically anyone who's going to be participating in the point-in-time count. We always schedule them typically for the first few weeks of January prior to the point-in-time count. So this year's date, as you can see on our nice little logo, is January 23, or for an overnight count, it would be from January 22nd into 23rd, that overnight period. Okay, so we always try to schedule those trainings in early January. Please reach out to Monarch to schedule those trainings if you have not already. Okay, our slide at the end where I provide a little summary of what the duties are of the point-in-time count coordinators that we're asking you to help us with. One of those critical ones is to schedule a training with us that we can come and provide that guidance directly to your volunteers or your agencies and partners. And so we ask that you try to set that up with us again by about a month from now, by December 14th, so that we can make sure that there's space, make sure that we have the materials, make sure that we are on board and can provide someone in person to assist you in providing training. If you are going to provide an addendum, if you are asking for information above and beyond what is required and that we are doing as part of the statewide coordination to gather the HUD required data elements, please plan to have someone in your community assist us with the training and to train on that addendum information. Because it's your information, we want to make sure you are providing the guidance to your community as necessary. So please keep that in mind. Don't just, kind of brush off the fact that there's going to be an addendum and that we're going to be training on the point-in-time survey. If there's additional information that you guys are looking to get, we want to make sure that people are trained appropriately based on your needs. So we'll coordinate and collaborate to make sure that that works out and we leave enough time in our presentation to assist you and give you guys the floor for that. Training materials such as our user guide, quick reference guide, abbreviation list, and online data entry guide will still be provided again this year. However, in addition to our, New Jersey counts or NJCounts materials, please, again, as I said before, go and take a look if you are inclined or if you are some of the folks in charge of determining methodology for your COC, check out the point-in-time count methodology guide and the HIC and PIT or housing inventory chart and point-in-time data collection guides. Okay, these links that are in my presentation, along with the recording, which I will send out shortly, I'll also make sure that you have the hyperlinks to these specific sites in HUD's guidance. We want you to have all the tools at your fingertips to understand why HUD has provided the guidance they have, and make sure that you guys are making the best decision for your community, and that as to the degree that we are collaborating as a state in doing NJCounts statewide, we want to make sure that everybody understands why we are using the methodology that we're using. Okay. More HMIS guidance will be provided in December. There are some things that are maybe kind of shifting around in terms of the longitudinal system analysis and how programs are set up in the HMIS, but we already went over that most critical piece, which would be making sure that supportive service only projects that are set up, if they are providing hotel motel placements, that the hotel motel placements are separate. I think most of those have been covered, but there may be some additional HMIS guidance coming your way, so keep an eye out for that. We will as we are doing here for the point-in-time coordinators, we typically also provide training webinars on the same trainings that we'll be providing in person in January. However, we have not determined the exact time of those webinars yet, and we may just pre-record it and send you guys the link when it is prepared. However, we typically do not provide it early on in January. We typically provide it later and sooner, close to the date of the point-in-time count, because typically folks actually have a better chance to ask good questions. They may be actually more attentive and involved in an in-person training where you have someone who's up there and is accessible to make sure that we are saying the correct thing for your community specifically. Again, if you have an addendum or if you have any other local information and know-how that needs to be included, our training webinar is going to be very general. It's going to be statewide, so it's not going to maybe have the nuance that you need at the local level. We will provide it in case there's some folks who need the information of how to do the survey last minute who couldn't make your trainings, but we also want you to be relied on and for that local training to be relied on primarily. All right, and the practice survey, like I said earlier, the reason that we're looking to have those addenda information by the 7th of December is because by the 17th of December, we're hoping that you'll have the practice SurveyMonkey link to distribute so that your agencies can practice, and that will run for about a month from the 17th of December to January 15th. And it has to stop then, because then we're going to start actually collecting the real point-in-time data, as you can see here. All right, so for paper surveys, if you are doing the data collection with paper survey for street outreach or non-HMIS providers, the questions will be updated, and they are asking, instead of about last year in 2018, they're asking about the overnight period of January 22 to January 23, 2019. And you can confirm again with your trainees and with Monarch what the data collection time frame is locally, because it may not just be that overnight period when you're doing a blitz count or a census count. It could be that you're doing a 7-day service-based count. So make sure that we know and you know how to train your participants. That deadline for paper surveys is going to be Wednesday, February 6th. So once we've collected the paper surveys during your count window, okay, the data must be inputted online using your designated SurveyMonkey link by 5 p.m. on Wednesday, February 6th. So that gives you and your participants 2 weeks in order to enter that data into the SurveyMonkey portal. The online survey link, the actual live survey link, will open on Wednesday, January 16, 2019, and that's only to be used for instance, those programs that are entering information that they know is going to be accurate for the night of the point-in-time count, such as stably sheltering programs for perhaps your Board of Social Services or the non-HMIS transitional housing programs that may have long-term stayers that they know will be in the program on the night of the point-in-time count. If you have any question about that, feel free to contact us or bring it up in our trainings. For HMIS, our count method, we're going to be pulling the HMIS data on Friday, January 25th. And this one goes hand in glove with what you can see down here, the summary form, okay, or the shelter summary form or the summary survey form. We really need that by Friday, January 25th, because when we do our HMIS poll, if we, again, pull the information from HMIS, from a shelter, and it says 10 beds, or excuse me, 10 households and 20 beds, and the shelter summary form says 10 households and 26 beds, we're missing a person in the HMIS poll, and we want to make sure that that person's accurately entered, or maybe there was a miscount on the summary form, and we want to make sure that that gets corrected. All right. Those deadlines, again, for the shelter summary form, we're asking for that 2 days following the count, which is going to be Friday, January the 25th by 5 p.m. because we're going to do our HMIS poll initially on the 25th to compare. And then our final HMIS poll will be the same day as our SurveyMonkey poll, 2 weeks after the point-in-time count. If there's any discrepancies, we'll have 2 weeks to fix them with you and your providers in the HMIS so that we can pull it on February 6th, that Wednesday. All right, moving on. So your point-in-time count coordinator role, obviously you're our liaison to the community. So we're asking you to disseminate point-in-time count information, help and address addressing the point-in-time count questions that pop up, provide the surveys to agencies, and if you can, have those codes that we need to verify with you pre-populated. So if you're sending a code to agency A, that when they get that survey, agency A's code is already pre-populated on it. That may help them, and it may get, you know, us accurate information, because they will not have a question on, hey, what the heck is my code? Although hopefully you've verified with them that they are going to participate. And then collecting shelter summary forms, as we said, and sending them on to us. And then also coordinate the media outreach response, okay? So if there is a liaison in your community that needs to be the press contact, make sure that we're aware of that, and make sure that they are tied into what to expect as well. So I just got a question that I want to address. There's a specific question to Morris County about social services in a particular township having a code for their own office. That's a great question, and I will look into that and send that information to you this afternoon. But that's a great example. If you have, for instance, a county social services office, but you have some independent municipalities that don't participate in the county-wide process for screening of TANF, EA, GA, and some of those other benefits such as food stamps, then you may want to make sure that that agency or that municipal entity has its own code. So it's a great question. We will have to drill down on that and make sure you have those answers so that everybody who needs to be included is included. Don't know off the top of my head. All right, follow-up. Deduplication. We need you as the point-in-time coordinator and COC lead to help establish within your COC a deduplication process. We always host a next steps webinar, and we also always try to make sure that you know what the duplicates look like and what some of the common issues are. One of the things we ask you to establish is a data cleanup team or primary contact. Sometimes it's really helpful to try to establish a small team that can look at these issues of data cleanup and the duplicates list, because then folks have a little bit more reliable information, or maybe they feel like there was a process and multiple eyes were on it instead of just the COC lead or the COC executive committee just making decisions about who is and isn't included. So we encourage you to consider whether that's appropriate in your community, who can participate, and who are the primary folks that would be helpful in that endeavor. Point-in-time media contacts we just mentioned before. Please contact Kate Kelly in our office at Monarch Housing with your point-in-time count media contact person information by December the 14th. So along with the agency code list and the HIMIS code list, we're asking you to provide us that media contact or press contact person by December 14th. We always provide some press advisory and template materials for a release, so keep an eye out for that, and make sure that our contacts lists are up to date if you want us to be sending out information that you can use to get to particular outlets and contacts. All right, so this is our summary slide. Okay, I just want to go down bullet point by bullet point, and obviously this is intended to help you have all the information in one place instead of scattered throughout our presentation. But Friday, November 16th, 2018 is the HIMIS Advisory Council. That's going to be at HMFA in Trenton, so please plan to participate in that meeting. We will be talking about some methodology issues that translate across our entire state, so we want to make sure that you're a part of it. Plan and executive COC, or excuse me, execute, that should say, the COC sheltered and unsheltered count methodology. So please make sure that you've passed the plan for your methodology and your strategy to your executive committee, executive board of your COC, and that they've signed off on it so that you can run with it. Then inform Monarch by Friday December 7th of 2018 regarding your Point-in-Time-Count addenda plan. If you are going to include additional questions, that's the most crucial piece. If you can get us all that information that we specified before about what questions, what answers, what types of questions you want to include, so we can get you a link that has that information as soon as possible, that would be the way to go so that we can properly train your folks in advance of the Point-in-Time-Count. Then please also verify your agency code list and HIMIS agency list by December 14th, 2018. Also by December 14th, about a month from now, we want to have a scheduled Point-in-Time-Count training date with Monarch. So if you are asking us, as we are offering to come and do an in-person presentation to folks about the Point-in-Time-Count and the survey and the materials that are available, please make sure to schedule that with us in the next month. And then also establish your media contact or press contact person with our team and our colleague Kate by December 14th. And then after we've established some of those pieces and we're on track for January, we're going to be sending out the training materials and survey materials to you, and we're going to ask you to disseminate it to the Point-in-Time-Count participants. Monarch always provides it as an available resource on our website, so you can direct people there, but you could also make copies for volunteers. You could also send it directly to participating agencies so they have access to it as well. Okay? Distribute and collect the completed shelter summary forms by Friday, January 25th, 2019, right? So that's that check and balance sheet that we require in order to ensure that we have an accurate pull of the data from HMIS or from the SurveyMonkey link for all of your sheltering agencies. And then assist us in coordinating that deduplication process in February of 2019. It's critical that we accomplish that as soon as possible after the Point-in-Time-Count, because we always need to report that data, not just in report format that we generate from year to year, but also you are required as a continuum of care to report it directly to HUD, usually in April of every year. So just make sure that we are on track with that deduplication process, that you have a team in place, or you know who the contact should be, who's going to look over those records that we identify as possible duplicates, and we'll make sure that we get that done as efficiently as possible, because that's a crucial bit. All right. So we have arrived to the thank you screen. That means that we're through our webinar for now, but please don't hesitate to ask any further questions that you have. If you send an email to njcounts@monarchhousing.org, it doesn't go to a nameless, faceless phantom. It comes directly to my inbox. Once again, my name is Jay at Monarch, and that phone number there doesn't go to anybody else's voicemail except me. So, or if I'm at my desk, hopefully you'll get me. That number is 908-272-5363, extension 232. If you have other questions, again, once our materials are posted, monarchhousing.org will have them. And not seeing any other questions beside the one that I alluded to in our sidebar, I will thank you all on this Veterans Day off for taking the time to participate in our webinar. I hope it's been helpful to kind of just touch base again and reorient for this year's Point-in-Time-Count. That's just around the corner in a couple of months. So we're excited, but there's still very much to do. So please don't hesitate if there's anything we can do to help expedite and make more efficient your process for decision making or executing the Point-in-Time-Count. And we'll hope to see everybody at the HMIS Advisory Council on the 16th. And then we will also be planning to have a check-in webinar to see where you all are with your planning sometime in December. And we'll be disseminating information, as I said, this week and in the coming weeks. So thank you. Have a beautiful day, and thank you for your efforts to participate in NJCounts 2019. We will talk to you all again very soon, I am sure.